And are you good, Marcia, with letting people in, or do you want me to open the waiting room, or?
No, I can let people in because.
Okay. Oh, here's Kate.
Okay, great.
Here. She's here in audio. Hi, Kate. We see that you're here, but
You see a very happy, pretty picture of you.
She must be in a car on her way. She was no, she's not in a car.
Just adjusting here. It was different on when I did my practice Zoom, so trying to make sure I'm in the right spot.
Can you guys see and hear me?
We sure can.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, good. Oh, that's exciting. Sorry, didn't know that. Hi.
Can you not see us?
So strange. Yeah, I can see you guys.
We couldn't at first, but
Oh, because I turned off self view, of course. Sorry, this has been a weird morning. So we're having our house insulated and my normal room is now, it looks like a hazmat scene. It's all taped up and there's dudes in there in suits. So I had to shift operations down to a porch. I just need to grab my glasses. I'll be right back. Hi, Susan. It's nice to see you.
nice to see you too. Okay, Marcia, I'm gonna make you the host and then I'm gonna duck out.
Okay.
Have a great meeting.
And then am I co-host then?
I believe I made you co-host too.
Okay.
I think everybody's either host or co-host, so.
Not me. I'm late.
Oh, you're co-host also.
Really? Ooh, I got the power.
You
Yeah.
have
Lovely.
power, Kate.
Have a great meeting, everybody.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Susan.
Bye, Susan.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So
Hmm.
Lori, do you have any slides or anything that you want to put up already? Do you want to go ahead and get set up?
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of a, it's going to be fine, but it's going to be fine. But the challenge is finding, when I share my screen, I can't see the stop sharing. Do you know what I mean?
Ah.
Yeah.
Can you hit
So-
escape to trigger that? Usually that's my move.
Okay, so then
That might
what
be
do you
pretty
see?
obvious. But
Then what
we
do you see?
see,
Well, we don't see anything.
I see
right
the three of
now.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then when I do this, what do you
It
see?
doesn't do anything. It made you freeze for a second.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing your screen.
Hmm.
Okay, just a second. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to figure out how is the best way. Okay.
Because sometimes we have to run it and just leave it with the slides on the side and just go through it, you know?
Yeah,
just to
that's probably
minimize.
what I'm going to have to do. So people have the opportunity they have the ability to move, like make the slide smaller, and if they want to see me bigger or something.
I don't know about that. I mean, there's those
Well, can
different
you?
views.
What do you see right now? Oh, wait, hang on. Sorry.
We still don't see your screen.
Sorry.
We're calm though. Everybody's calm. here.
Alexis, okay.
Oh, it's happening. All right.
Okay. So,
Yeah, you just need to maximize your screen. There you go.
Okay.
So now you can't see us. Is that the challenge?
no, that's okay. I don't know what happened to my last name, but I better put that on. All right.
All right. Oh, I love your facts.
My what?
I can see your notes because we can
Oh.
see your entire
Oh.
desktop right now.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Now you just see my slide, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
So that's
And
perfect.
can you see me at
Awesome.
all?
Yeah, we can see you too.
Great. All righty.
Woohoo.
So I guess we're ready. Whenever.
So did you guys already talk about Q&A and how we'll run that?
Okay,
No, we
so
didn't talk about that.
yeah,
at
so
all.
here's the deal. I've kind of thought about doing this a little differently. So I'm going to just do a really quick intro, set it up, and then I'm going to ask people to share their challenges.
Mhm.
I want to get out like what makes you crazy about meetings, what are your challenges? What do what makes meetings so unproductive and awful, So I just want to get that. So if you're able to capture that, and I wanted you to decide whether you want people to raise their hands and you can call on them, or if you want to put it in chat and just read them to me. How do you think people would respond best? I guess.
Well, first, I do want to say, Lori, that people are not responsive like that. Like, don't think that people are going to interact with you.
Okay.
Because they may not have any chat questions or anything. So I don't want to set it up like people are talkative that way.
Well, and it's not going to be questions. So I'm like, okay, what makes you crazy about meetings? What
Sure.
what are your challenges? Whether it's your meeting or whether it's somebody else's meeting, what are your challenges? So you don't think people would chat that?
They'll chat it.
Let's do that.
Both. You can have people, you could let them raise their hands. We do it both ways. We don't care. They can either chime in and raise their hand, or it's totally up to what you want to do though,
Okay.
But we definitely will monitor the chat for you. And then we read the question out loud to everybody, and then you would answer it.
Perfect. Yep.
The other thing I think we can count on is that if there's dead silence, crickets, which I don't expect, but if there were, I think Marcia and I would always be willing to jump in with our things that bother us about meetings. So you won't face a wall of nothing.
Okay.
If we do wind up with a smaller group, like a couple of dozen today, then that might be a perfect moment to let people sort of, raise hand, chat it out. But I think the larger the group, the more useful that chat monitoring has been for us.
Right. I agree.
And I think there were 50 people actually that signed up, not the 39. Well, there were 39, but I guess it went to 50. So.
Right. I know some of my colleagues are.
I had my marketing director too. I asked him to please join.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we are waiting for Snowmageddon here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're supposed to, over the next today and tomorrow, we're supposed to get 16 to 20 inches. So.
Yeah, they said record breaking, right?
Mm-hmm. Kind of crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Still wintertime.
Yes, it is.
Even though I'm like hopeful for spring, but I'm like, well,
have you all been getting ice, or what have you been getting?
Rain.
We had slush yesterday. It snowed and then it immediately kind of like melted on contact. It was pretty coming down though.
It was beautiful, and it did cling to the branches and the roofs for a little bit. So it's always picturesque, but no accumulation for us.
Okay, I'm going to go get those glasses. Do I have time? I think I have time. Yeah, I'll be right back.
2 minutes.
So you just keep everybody in the chat room until
we just, because 9 people have entered it, where there's 12 participants. So we're just waiting.
Okay.
Just give people a few more minutes and then we let them through.
Right. Do something with the light here. I think that's going to make it. Is that too bright? Does it look too bright, or is it okay?
No, it's fine.
I think I can turn it down.
You look good, but you were good before too.
Okay, good, because that's like really, really bright. How's that?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, it's not very bright outside right now.
And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna read your bio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Short and sweet.
yeah.
So once you do that, my intro is a little different than people do it. So I kind of
Oh,
just
you're fine.
start right in with the grabber, you know, and so, so you don't go, what is she doing?
We don't worry about anything here. It's whatever you want to do.
I suppose.
Yeah, we're easy. We know it'll be great.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah, and just so I'm going to ask for those challenges, and then I'm going to go. I'm going to show. I'm going to show the reason that most of those challenges exist, and I'm going to show a template. You know, kind of. I'm going to explain the structure of. I'm just going to explain something, and I'm going to walk through with that, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So it won't be super long, but I want to start with people participating, and then share, and then go back.
well, you've got a lot of time. I mean, we don't end till 9:30, so you can
Yeah.
take your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. I don't want people to think I'm going to slide them to death, so I'll let them know.
Well, people don't mind being slided to death if you have something good to say. I mean, we have presentations run the entire time, you know, and they'll give like 15, 20 minutes for Q&A. That's
Yeah.
fine too.
I think what you're hearing from us is you can't do this wrong, but your plan sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay, do you want me to do then Lori's intro?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please.
And do you want to kick it off?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, sure. You know, I feel passionately about this topic.
I know. That's why I'm like,
Okay, well, we should
talking
probably
anyway.
start on time since that's one of the challenges meetings, right?
Oh, true,
all
true.
right, well, I think we better get going because it's 8:18.
All right, I'll admit all.
Okay.
Good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. Okay. Good morning, everybody. First rule of having successful meetings is starting on time. How are we doing?
Room for improvement, a little bit.
Thanks, Sandy. A thumbs up goes a long way. Well, let's jump into it though, so we don't waste any more precious minutes. Good morning and welcome to a BSA Marketing and PR Network session on meetings. We're calling it masterminding your meetings for maximum results. But really what it comes down to is, well, believe it or not, this is a passion topic of mine. Because I realized about a year ago that I was definitely not doing meetings right. I was showing up to them, not sure that I was inviting the right people, not sure that I was really clear on what we wanted out of the hour, fearful because I knew that I wasn't going to get through it in time. I mean, it's really all off. I'm exposing my failings here, but like it was all off, and I'm sort of been struggling with working on how to prepare for meetings so that people know what they're expected to do, make sure that I'm inviting the right group. Make sure that I'm setting goals reasonably in meetings, make sure that I follow up so that the meeting doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It's part of a process for me. So I couldn't be more thrilled to host a session on this topic. It's something that nobody teaches you, not in architecture school, at least, definitely not on the job as far as my experiences are concerned. And so I think we really need to like pick the brain of an expert on this topic to learn more, to start some conversation and to get better at this. Marcia, I'd love to turn it over to you to introduce our guest, Lori.
Yeah, so we have Lori Carell. She is a veteran communications consultant, speaker, and coach with Sage Presence. She is a senior consultant at the firm, specializing in helping AEC professionals to more confidently communicate their message and persuade people to action. Lori has led hundreds of meetings and has helped others to facilitate their meetings more effectively. And so we're very excited today to have Lori present and to help us become better to do better at hosting meetings. So Lori, take it away.
Great. Thank
And
you.
Lori, before you fully take it, let me ask you a question. You would like us to have a little bit of an interactive session. And I think we talked about doing, people can put questions in the chat, but given the size of the group, I think we could do if you want to do hand raises, I'll monitor that. Or I think people can feel free to unmute and shout it out. If it gets cacophonous, we'll shift gears. Does that sound right?
Okay. However it works is great. You bet.
Okay.
This is the whole idea is that this is interactive, and I'm not going to drone on for an hour and a half. So everybody needs to know that. Okay. $37 billion. That's what companies spent on average last year on unproductive meetings, according to Inc. magazine. And believe it or not, 92% of those 92% of the meeting attendees were multitasking. And I'm sure you can relate to that. There's nothing worse than leading a meeting and having everybody checking their email. So that to me was quite stunning. So, we all wish we would have better meetings, and here we are in another meeting. So what I'm going to do is try to make this as good for you and beneficial for you as I can, because I know that these meetings are challenges, definitely, to Kate's point. So, I've got a powerful approach, a process, if you will, and a methodology. It's not that complicated, but a methodology for making your meetings, well, first of all, getting people to come to your meetings and making sure the meetings are productive and efficient. And when people walk out of there, they feel like, boy, that was a good use of my time. So that's my goal today. And before we start, I would love to understand, and if you can either speak up or put it in the chat, but I would like to know the background, because why you're here, okay? And there's probably several reasons, but what would you say is your biggest challenge, either leading meetings or being a participant? So share those with us, and so we can see where we're coming from.
So feel free to throw it in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute yourself and talk. Chris, go ahead. You're first.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. So I guess I'll do a two-part question. So for my day job at an architecture firm, would love to have our meetings be more efficient. I think it's good to get people to get buy-in, and sometimes people want to say, oh, we want to connect on Zoom just to connect with people, but then you're having the same meeting every week about the same tasks, and then nothing's getting done. So I'm a huge advocate for prioritizing. So would love to learn more about that. And then on the other question, I lead a meeting as a chairman of a nonprofit for the ACE Mentor program in Rhode Island, and getting people to be excited to, when I open it up for discussion, sometimes it's crickets, sometimes it's two people, but really I'm trying to empower the rest of the group to work on efforts that they're excited about. So anything about kind of empowering the team that's on the meeting would be great too. So
wonderful. I'm sure you're not alone in all of those.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. What else?
Yeah, Lori, I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat, and a couple of them overlap. Dana and Nadia both mentioned getting people to participate. And Nadia was a little bit more specific, having people come prepared to contribute efficiently. And I feel both of those.
Right, absolutely. That's really important. And it almost never happens. So. Okay, we're going to talk about all of these. I just would like you to get them out so that I know what's, what's important to you, so that this is really tailored to those of you that are on. And I have a frog, of course.
I've got a couple of similar ones from Christy Norris at GPI. Hi, Christy, and Sandy at Ascentech. Christy mentions getting stuck in details that don't pertain to everyone in the meeting. And Sandy it's kind of related. How to discourage folks who repeat themselves and make the meeting longer than necessary. Well, that's more of a political question, maybe.
Well, we all know what squirrel trails and rabbit holes do to a meeting, so that's
we
definitely
all have somebody in our mind's eye right now. I know. Jan Taylor at ARC also mentions making sure that there's clear next steps and that those tasked with follow-up engage. That's a key one. And somebody else mentioned having an agenda. So it's the preparation and then the follow through on both ends. People are challenged.
Right. And it's the lack of preparation makes most meetings unproductive. One of the main things. We'll talk about that. Anything else? I think things will come to mind for you. What some of the things, Kate, I know you and Marcia, you all talked about that you had some real specifics, and Kate specifically, as far as what's tough for you.
Yeah. One of the challenges that I have, it echoes the same things that others are saying, like Jan Taylor at ARC with the next steps and follow through, and Jennifer Shelby at IMEG, how to make accountability stick when people leave the meeting and it's like it never happened. I mean, that really hits home for me as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I was going to say, I like what Katie Tasmer had to say, making sure everyone is heard and the talkers leave room for others. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Okay, good. Other challenges.
Mary Lou. Oh,
okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Mary Lou Kearns at DSK mentioned tips or tricks maybe during Teams or Zoom meetings specifically.
Okay, good. We'll definitely talk about that. So here's the thing is that I would like to share with you something that's going to really encompass all of these things. And it's not going to take a long time because I really want to make sure that I answer your questions. And as we go through this, I know you'll have more questions. So if at any point you have a question about what I'm talking about, put it in the chat, and Marcia and Kate will interrupt me or step in and chime in, and we'll kind of do that as we go along, so you don't have to save your questions. Seems like that would be a better flow for everyone. So a little bit about SAGE presence. The principals of SAGE were filmmakers, and as you all know, when you're watching a movie or reading a book, there are several parts to that. Marcia, what would you say? What are the parts of a, the two parts? There's
like beginning, middle, end for like
beginning, middle, end.
Narrative arc. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And what I notice is when I'm watching a movie that doesn't resolve itself in a happy, positive way, the ratings from the critics are high, but the ratings from the viewers are not so high, because everybody wants to have that ending that really makes the whole story worthwhile, and it really makes you feel good, and because you cared about the people in the movie and you knew that there was a problem in the beginning. And if you believe that or not, that really relates to every type of presentation, conversation, persuasion, and participation event that we have. And I'll explain that more, because that might be a little bit out there right now at this point. So let me get to the next one. So everything that we're going to talk about as far as the meeting here, and this is what I'm going to share with you, that I'm sure that if you apply it, it will really solve a lot of problems. But we call it the story structure. And as Marcia said, there's a beginning, right? Maybe it's a not so happy beginning when it comes to your meetings. There's a reason you're having them. There's a problem that needs to be solved, or there's information that needs to be gathered, or it's an update, but people don't have what they need to keep going if there isn't an update. So that's what we call the beginning, or the not so happy beginning. And then the action in the middle is really what everybody contributes. And it's different topics on the agenda, and everyone in that meeting is responsible for doing something, for participating. And if they're not participating, they don't belong in the meeting. And that's why most of us, when we feel like, boy, this is boring, I'm going to check my email, it's because it doesn't pertain to us. So the end, the happy ending, that's when, okay, everybody's shared what they've completed their short presentation on whatever their assignment was. We talked about that before the meeting. And everybody has what they need. And next steps are laid out. And at the end of all, everybody will have accomplished what the purpose of the meeting, so that we have a happy ending, which is what we all want. So as far as that's the storyline. Who are the players? Well, the main character is certainly a player, and the main character is everybody in the room, because everybody is going to be walking through a story structure. That's hopefully that's the idea, so that they can share, well, here's my issue, or here's how this relates to our big project or our problem. And then that's the action. The action middle is their whatever they're contributing, their contribution to that, and why they think that's going to solve one of the problems, or their part of the problem. So they're a main character, but in every story, there needs to be a hero. And the hero is also everybody in the meeting, but it's whoever is speaking at the time, whoever's contributing, telling their story. They are the hero of the story and the main character of the story. Does that make sense? Does that resonate? All right.
I think it
So
will. Certainly, if I felt like I was the main character of the meeting, then I would be paid attention and I would be bringing my conflicts to the table.
right.
I've never ever been introduced to something like this before, though, honestly. I've never, in the context of a meeting, just
Right.
in a story.
Keep going, Lori.
Well, okay.
Right?
You
All
got
right.
us. All right.
The thing is, okay, so communicating with story really gives your message meaning. People get it. If you've ever heard somebody ramble on, it's like, is there a thought in there? Because I'm not getting what you're trying to say. And it's typically because there is not a problem expressed. They don't start out by saying, okay, we are behind schedule on this project, and this is the area we're behind in, and we need to deal with that. And then here's my solution for that. This is what I recommend, and any details that go with that. And then the last part is, because we know how important it is to get this done, because otherwise the client doesn't get their project done on time. Okay. What questions? Any questions on that? I'm going to give you a minute while I get some more. All right. So let's talk about how that really applies to meetings, because that's what we're all here for. But I will say that this structure works for business development, any kind of interview strategies when you're in front of the selection committee. You want to have for your part a beginning and a middle and an end. And the problem may, in that case, be the project, something in the project that they haven't thought about. And the solution is what you as a firm, or you as an individual designer, bring to the table, what it is that you can do to solve that problem for them that they didn't know that they may have, in order to get whatever that issue was resolved. So it's really pretty basic. And, if you think about it, I mean, all stories are based on that beginning, middle, end, and there's a hero and a main character. So in a meeting, when you're planning the meeting, you're the main character and the hero, and we'll get into the detail of that. And so what I wanted to do is give you that template right up front here, for for planning a meeting, because I know that's what everybody wants. So first of all, most of us, we go, oh my gosh, we got to get together on this, and I got to call a meeting. Okay, let's see. Everybody should be there because everybody needs to know everything. Well, to begin with, that is one of the problems, and that's why people are multitasking, like I said, because they don't really need to be there. So we've got to find out. So we need to do the planning, and deciding who to come to attend is important. First of all, as the meeting planner, we've got to be able to articulate what problem is motivating that meeting. What is the issue? Because we need to be able to articulate that to the attendees when we do the invitation so that they understand, wow, didn't realize we had this problem, or, oh yeah, I didn't think of that, or that's right, I'm glad somebody's finally addressing it. And then who should attend? And I mentioned this earlier. If you don't have an active role, if someone doesn't have an active role in the meeting, they need to be removed from the list. They don't need to be in the meeting. That would come in a summary for people that is an information only at the end, which is the responsibility of the meeting planner. And then you've got to identify what role each attendee has, what part are they playing. So it's like, that's where you're letting people know that they've got an assignment, you know, that this is your part in this, and I would like you to share your ideas on X to help us get to Y, which is the desired goal or outcome. So we've got beginning with the problem. We've got the middle, which is who should attend and what are their roles. And then what is the desired goal and outcome, which is the happy ending. So the agenda then includes all of those things with one extra thing, and that's the time frame. The reason that we have scope creep and rabbit holes or squirrel trails and meetings that go over the time that they're supposed to, and I know we've all been there, it's really important to set out a clear agenda. Again, this isn't rocket science, and I know everybody knows this, but it just doesn't get done because we're like, okay, how do we do this? I don't want to be too structured. We don't want to discourage people from contributing. So it's really important then to, in the meeting, the purpose of the meeting is the problem and what we need to do about it. So the purpose of the meeting is the problem. And then the goal is, again, where we want to get. And for the individuals, they need to understand that, okay, you are on the agenda, Mary, first, and we would like you to talk about X and share this. And you've got 5 minutes to do that. And then, of course, it's up to the meeting, the facilitator, to make sure that we stick to that. And I know that's one of the challenging things, but there's definitely, if you remind people and if you let them know that that's a time period that they really need to have, it works wonders. It really does. And sometimes you have to cut people off and table things and put it on the parking lot. What questions do you have on that piece? Again, it's pretty self-explanatory, but.
Feel free to raise hands or shout it out if you have questions, whatever Lori pauses. You can also throw questions in the chat as we're going if it's not quite the right
Or
time.
you can say, yeah, but, right? Instead of a question, right? You say, well, wait a minute. Whatever. If this doesn't make sense to you, I want to make sure I address those things.
I think Jessica might have something.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
a question. I just wanted to talk about a little bit about the active role, and maybe you get into this more a little bit later, but I'm thinking in terms of sometimes when we invite people to a meeting, it might be a younger staff member that we want to train, we want them to observe. So they're not actually active in the meeting, but the reason there is a valid reason for them to be there, right? Well, they might not participate, they're still learning and observing what's going on in that meeting.
And if it's appropriate to announce that to the group, that would be, it would be a good idea, because the idea is we basically want to condition people to the fact that the only people that are really in the meeting are people that have active roles. This is an exception because it's going to be beneficial for this individual to sit in and see how the interaction goes, et cetera. Right? So are you talking about teaching someone to facilitate a meeting or just hearing what's going on if they're new?
Yeah, so sometimes it's both, right? Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
We might have people who are just out of school and it's like, hey, we want you to attend our weekly OAC meetings to hear how the contractor talks, hear how the owner talks, hear how we talk in that situation where they might hear us talking, they might hear us talking one way in the office where nobody else is around, and we might be sharing our frustrations, but it's like, no, we have to take those frustrations out of the conversation as you go forward and talk in the right audience, right?
Good. And that would be something you can explain, and introducing the person and explaining that you wanted them to observe how our meetings go and all the things that you said, and their purpose is to observe and to capture, make note of any questions that they have, and after the meeting they can be resolved with the facilitator, but it's just good so that people know who are you and why are you here.
Yep, no, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. What else? Anything else?
Lori, I have a question. If you've set up that we include the people that should attend that have a role and are supposed to participate, but I want to go back to one of the questions in the chat. If you invite these people and they have the role, how do you get people to participate? Because they're the ones that need to be there. Now tell me how to make them be active players in the meeting.
Absolutely. Well, again, if it's got to be compelling, because we all know about people's why. People do things because of their why, and that's why it's so important to explain that this is the problem. These are the implications of that problem. This is your part in solving that problem, because this is where we want to end up. So it has to be compelling, and sometimes subjects aren't compelling. I mean, especially like status updates and project updates. It's people just drone on about everything that they've done for the last 2 weeks because they want to make sure everybody knows they've been working on it. But it's really about giving everyone a topic, an agenda, and everybody's name is on there, and the time frame is on there, and what they're expected to talk about is on there, right? And each of them should be giving their story. Okay, so I think what typically will happen, what typically happens is it takes a while for people to understand it. But if they're on the agenda and they're not prepared and they don't know what to say and they don't have anything to contribute, I mean, it's kind of a shaming thing. I think, it's going to get to the point where it's a culture that I have a role. And that agenda, we say have an agenda, but it's really how that agenda is written, making sure that everybody does have a role. There's an expectation. Here's your time frame, and it's in this order. So you kind of have egg on your face if you haven't prepared.
So you really need to distribute the agenda and everything well in advance. Like,
Yes.
what would you recommend? Because this isn't just sending it a day in advance like we typically would.
It depends, because it may not be that complicated. If it's a status update, here's what we need. We don't know what you're doing in the project. That's why we need to hear from you. What the top 3 things that are, maybe challenges for you, and what kind of help you need, what kind of solution do you need? People will, I don't think it takes that much time, because they're there because they have something to contribute. Does that resonate? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So, sometimes you need to call a meeting right away, but you still need an agenda. Otherwise, it really, because those things often are panic situations or crises or whatever the case might be. And maybe it's just a short and sweet. I need this from you, that from you, this from you. And we only have 15 minutes, so you get 3 minutes each, or whatever the case might be. And they can even, bring something to hand out, whatever you think would be helpful. There's so many different situations, so many different reasons that we have meetings, but for the most part, you've got to tell them what's going to happen, and you got to tell them what you need from them and what their role is going to be in order to make it all a success. And hopefully everybody you are inviting is invested in that solution, invested in that goal, that outcome, the happy ending.
Lori, I've got 2 more questions
Great.
about, this who should attend, who should play a part. The first one is, how would you deal with potential or perpetual saboteurs who have maybe higher authority than you, but habitually throw meetings off track and detract from the set agenda?
Well, the first thing I would say is, do they really have a role? And if they don't have a role and you don't want them to have a role, don't invite them to the meeting. Quite frankly, because that can just blow everything up. And I know that sometimes you don't have a choice, but if you can help it, having that agenda, that person's going to see that, if you're going to invite them and they don't have a role, to begin with, I wouldn't do it, obviously, but if they do have a role, then it says, this is what we need from you. Or you could do it out, offline. And you find out from that individual, hey, I know you're busy and I don't want to pull you into the meeting, all these meetings, but what can you tell me about X, and what can you provide for Y?
There was a follow-up question on that one, which was, what if the saboteur is hosting the meeting?
Well, then I would think that person wouldn't have an agenda, and some things you have to suffer through. And yeah, I mean, if it's someone that's up the org chart, I guess you just have to do it. But I think that questions that we can ask can help drive that. So if they start going on and ranting and raving, somebody might say, okay, so can you help me understand? So what problem are we trying to solve? Okay, and what do you recommend for a solution? What do you need from us to accomplish the goal that you're looking for, which they probably have shared? They probably shared the problem, maybe not, but it'll probably derail on the solution part. So if attendees know this structure, hold them accountable for the beginning, the middle, and the end, the problem, the solution, and the outcome.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could recommend for that. But I know there's difficult, challenging people, so I get that.
Chris also asked a question. Chris, you want me to read it? You want to shout it out?
I can shout it out.
Great.
I was more so curious about, like, I know if, like, say you have like somebody like me who I'm trying to implement this structure, but then it's not becoming an office-wide standard. Have you found success? Like, it seems, I mean, I think I would know your answer, but like having a set standard of meeting structure being communicated to the whole staff from
Absolutely.
Leadership all the way down seems like that would be an awesome first step for everybody.
Absolutely.
Because it seems
Yeah.
just like if you go to one studio meeting or another meeting, or you're in your operations meeting or marketing, then everybody's doing it differently.
Yeah.
It is like an uphill battle, but I'm just curious on thoughts
Yeah.
of communicating that.
I think it's great. I think it's a great. I mean, that would be the ideal, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody has to champion it, and we go into firms and teach everybody this so that everybody's on the same page. And it really, I think it really makes it easier for everybody. And and if people know that who's there, what we're trying to accomplish, and that there's a time frame, and if you put how many minutes somebody has, they start to get it. So you can influence the culture, but absolutely, if it's something that you can adopt as a standard, that would be amazing. Yeah, that's a great point.
You could share parts of this presentation with them.
Yeah. Well, I met Dean and Troy at the NERC conference last year, and then gave Troy a ride to the airport. So I'm very familiar with your company, and
Wow.
I'm trying to champion, have you guys come and talk to us. So.
Okay. Yeah. Great. No,
yeah.
that's super. And I mentioned this, and this is somewhat off topic, but again, this is a structure for every message, and it's all about persuasion. It's persuading people to participate in the meeting and to share what they can do, their input. And again, it's for selection interviews, for shortlist interviews. It's the structure, it's compelling, and people understand it and they resonate with it, and typically you get action from it. So I'm glad to hear you're trying to be the champion and cheerleader. Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. What else? This is the preparation piece. So anything else about preparing, and we'll move to how this plays out in the actual meeting.
You gave me a window. All right. Mary Lou, do you have a question? I saw your mic.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you for reminding me about sending a reminder to people about the agenda, because I run the Monday morning office meetings, and first Monday of the month, we like to hear everyone's voice. And I tell people, let's have 3 things that, you want to share with us and tell us why it's important. And inevitably people come and, they're not prepared and they don't have things to share. And so just the reminder that I need to send that out. I need to talk about it the Monday before the first Monday, and I need to send an email out before that day as well, before the weekend,
Okay.
so that people can get prepared for it. So thank you. I just wanted to say that's an important point.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I think that what the participants are going to really appreciate is that they'll know exactly what they're supposed to, come prepared for, as will everybody else in the meeting. And they have a structure. You give them a structure so that when they're in the meeting, they are telling a story when it's their turn. And, you don't have to call it that if you think people will roll their eyes, but it's really, if you just say, tell us what your challenges or the problem is, or here's the problem, so now tell me what your solution would be to get us here. So how the facilitator really needs to, give the players their script, so to speak, and that would be a good, something to put in the initial meeting, but I think you're saying also remind people. Anything else on meeting prep? Everything before the meeting? Okay, good stuff. So what does it look like in the meeting? So our basic format is, okay, you're the facilitator, you're going to open the meeting, and you are going to give the story about the beginning, middle, and end for everyone. Okay, that's everyone. The story is about everyone. And then the body is where all of your main characters or your participants, they contribute and they walk through their story, quote unquote, if you prefer. And then the close is all about us again. And it's about the closing is, okay, we've pretty much got a great solution for this issue. And we know that if we do the things that we've talked about, and that's something I'll go back to, but if everybody plays their part and does what they said they're going to do, then we're going to have this great happy ending, and it's going to be, the client's going to love us, and we're going to save time and money, et cetera, et cetera. So what that speaks to then is action steps and accountability. So as soon as the main character is finished and talks about their solution, then it's up to us, the facilitator, to say, okay, so what are your next steps? When you leave the meeting, what are the things then that you're going to be accountable for? Or you can say, if you've made a note, so I heard you say, which is probably better, depending upon the person. What I heard you say is that, you were going to contact the client around this, and you are going to make sure you fully understand the issue, and you're going to get back to us with what they said, and then we're going to continue to work to fix that. That would be a way to summarize what each person said. And then the follow-up on that, again, it's a lot of heavy lifting for the meeting facilitator, but hopefully you're having the meeting because you are heavily invested in the outcome and you really see the problem and you really need help with a solution. But that would be then for you to follow up, give a timeline on each of these things. So you said you're going to do this, how long do you think, what do you think it'll take? So that you've got a plan at the end of the meeting and everybody knows what everybody's going to be doing, and you review it and then you hold them to the time frame by following up with them. Again, it's heavy lifting, but the other good thing is it makes people think twice before they have a meeting because not everything needs a meeting. And that's part of the problem, is that we think, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do about this. I just gonna have to invite a bunch of people to a meeting. And that's why we hate them. So what questions do you have on that piece? That was a lot I threw out there. Sorry, it's Minnesota. It's about, I don't know, 5 degrees and we're having a blizzard and it's very dry. So forgive me for trying to keep hydrated.
Elizabeth Mansfield has a question. She said, how would you recommend integrating open discussion in this framework? Okay, so discussion would be, the facilitator would ask if there's any questions at the end. And discussion is typically when that's a type of meeting, right? So you can have a brainstorming meeting, but it still has a beginning, middle, and end. And each person's part is to come and share
what my concerns are or what I need from the team, what I need from the group. And there certainly needs to be room for conversation, discussion. If the facilitator says, okay, so what questions do you have about Elizabeth's piece here? And what questions or suggestions, depending upon what it is. It's not like you want to shut people down, but if people are thorough and they follow this process, you don't really necessarily need discussion, again, unless it's a brainstorming thing. And then that's okay. Everybody come, we're going to brainstorm on this. This is the reason we're doing this. This is how we're going to get there. We're going to have a brainstorming session. And if we do that, then we're going to decide on an outcome, or I want your input and I'm going to make the decision, or we're going to vote on it, or, never mind, I'm going to make the decision. I don't need your input, which doesn't happen much. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. What else? Because I've told you the what, it's the how that we're getting at now, because I know that that's really a big challenge.
I'll note this looks so little like so many of my meetings, which sort of start with a problem statement at the beginning, and then the middle is just, it's like laser light show. People have different opinions.
Sure.
In the best case scenario, people share an opinion and then other people have things to say about that. And we actually all learn from the conflict, and people disagree, and we can actually debate about what the best way forward is. And that's, again, that to me has been the best kind of meeting, because it means that everybody's engaged and see the value of solving the problem and are like willing to put themselves out there and contribute. But that doesn't look anything like this. So maybe what I'm describing is more like a brainstorming meeting. It has one B, one M, and one E, and the M is that sort of back and forth.
Yep, absolutely. It's the important thing is people need to have the expectations set. And that's why when it's so much heavy lifting, like I said, for the facilitator, because everybody has to be really clear, but you're still going to let them know what the expectation is. I need you to think about X, Y, and Z, and maybe pointing out, okay, we want to talk about this piece of the project, and Mary's going to lead that. We want to talk about this issue that's come up, and we're all going to brainstorm, but I'd like Jim to facilitate that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So obviously there's going to be exceptions to the rule. I think the main thing is that getting people, to Chris's point, if you can get everybody to understand that, okay, this is what I see is the issue. And one of the things I recommend is this, and we've got to stop doing that. And that way we will, in my mind, from my perspective, we'll solve that. But you still have the participants, and they need to be really clear that they need to do a beginning, middle, and end. And all you just have to say is put that problem, solution, outcome format. And whether they'll do it or not, it remains to be seen. But that's all you can do. And when you're a participant in the meeting and it's chaos, then you can take control by asking the facilitator questions. Can we, I have a question. I'd like to get back to, if we could, can you share again what the true problem is that we're trying to solve here? Because I know we all have a lot of opinions, but if we're trying to accomplish this, do you know what I mean? So it kind of gets everybody back on track in a manner that when you're asking a question, people don't typically get upset if you're asking a question, unless it's snarky. Like, man, this meeting is a cluster, that's not helpful. Oh, any other questions?
A quick follow-up question
to
what you were just describing.
Yeah.
Do I interpret this correctly then, that maybe the main character B's should be they should be the same as the us B that's presented at the beginning, or are you proposing that these are separate challenges being introduced?
Okay. I'm not sure. So I'm not sure I understood. So can you just repeat that again?
Yeah. So would the ideal format be that you're introducing the us problem, and then the problem being presented by each of the main characters in the meeting? Should that I mean, ideally, they would be presenting the same challenge, or I guess I'm confused about the us challenge and then the introduction of sub challenges by each participant.
Sure, I understand. So the idea is when you have a meeting, you've got a high level reason for that, right? I mean, you know there's a problem. You're probably not sure, you may not be sure of the solution. You might have one in mind, but the middle is that how the meeting is going to go. So, you know, the middle is the way we're going to accomplish the happy ending, the problem. Way we're going to accomplish solving the problem is by each of us sharing from our perspective what you see your part is, you know, what problem your part is, what problems you have in getting us to where we need to go, and help maybe where you need to ask for solutions. You know, I mean, it's kind of hard to speak to it unless you know the topic.
Mhm.
Do you have a certain type of meeting then in mind when you're asking that, or are you just thinking in general?
Yeah, I think just generally that is helpful though. So it's their personal, it's almost like their personal take on the challenge and then ownership over their portion of the.
Yeah. I mean, it's your meeting, and you've already articulated the beginning, middle, and end in the invitation. But it's a good reminder that this is a big problem. The main reason I called this meeting is, man, oh man, if we don't fix this, we're going to have a big challenge. So the reason I called the meeting is you all have your individual parts, but the reason I called the meeting is that we need to figure out how to solve this problem, or we need to figure out what this process should be. And because we're all confused, or the client's upset, or whatever the case might be, and we need to solve that and make sure that we resolve the issues with all of your help. So let's start with Katie, because she's got the high level, whatever reason you have for your order. Maybe you don't have reason for your order, but whoever is first on the agenda, then you just turn it over to them. And Katie's going to give us a 5-minute, from her perspective, what her issues are, what solutions she needs help with, and in order to do her part in solving the big picture problem.
Right.
Other questions? What about questions around, are there any other how questions, like from your perspective as a facilitator, what you have to manage and the problems that you think come up? Because again, this is what needs to happen, but the how, we just talked about one of them. But if there are any other questions about that, it would be in this context. So if anybody has anything else there.
I've got a question, Lori.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about time blocking. It kind of relates to other people's questions about keeping it moving. I could see pros and cons to doing that. And sometimes I've enjoyed being in meetings where the entire agenda was blocked out into 7 and 9 and like 11-minute segments. And the facilitator has been very careful about keeping us on schedule. There's downside to that when sometimes you actually do find a topic that's ripe for disagreement and conflict, and you kind of want to let that play out a bit more. But there is a benefit. People feel real. I sometimes have felt more motivated by a meeting where I felt like somebody was taking the goal seriously. They really wanted to conclude, So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, if it's that kind of meeting where you anticipate that to be the case, then you can have each person has this much time, and then you put time for discussion and question. And you just add that in there, because that's going to be part of the solution. And the idea is then if you get to time and you've got all of this stuff going all over the place, that's good that they're thinking about these, but then perhaps it calls for another meeting, another conversation, because sometimes we try to save the world in one meeting, and it just seems like, okay, well, it sounds like Bill and Mary need to. Those are my my standing names that I always use. They always come to mind. So let's have, it sounds like Bill and Mary have a lot of ideas around X. Why don't we take it offline with the three of us? Or what I'd like to do is set a second meeting, and the problem we want to solve is X, and et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that would help? Okay. Because it would be great if we could go into every meeting and solve every problem that we have, or get it done in 15 minutes. But I know that that's not always the case. And of course, this is a structure that you can apply, but it certainly isn't, 24, 36, 72. I mean, it's gotta work for you based on what kind of a meeting that you need. So it's not cast in stone. It's a guideline.
So Lori, I have one other question going back to some of the comments that were put in the chat. So you do structure this meeting, you have the people giving their beginning, middle, end, but what about those people that do leave the meeting that need to be accountable? And then, may not ever follow up? How do you stick it to them? How do you get them to participate? What suggestions do you have for us on that?
So what I'm hearing, I think I'm hearing you say is, if you are an attendee in a meeting and the facilitator isn't holding people accountable for everything that they said they would do.
Yes, and additionally, you have like people that will just jump off the meeting. There's a lot of us who we're meeting virtual. How do you recommend we deal with this type of behavior /
Okay,
want to
so
get results?
the whole virtual thing is, yes, it's definitely something we should talk about, because it does happen. Part of that, and back to Chris's point, it's got to be a cultural thing. I mean, it has to be, everybody needs to understand that this is the expectation. And one of the expectations, I mean, if it were my firm and my it were up to me, I would require participants to have their cameras on and be focused on the meeting. And if I'm the facilitator, I'm going to call people out if they're multitasking or whatever. And again, that typically happens when people jump off, when there's no value to them. And so should they even have been on in the meeting? And the facility, somebody might say, well, I'm concerned that I know we're getting to the top of the hour here, and I do have something I've got to do before my next meeting at whatever, so maybe that person can go before somebody else or whatever, but it needs to be facilitated. The dropping off the meeting, if everyone in that meeting is not completely invested in getting us to our goal, that's what happens. So that's really about, maybe we shouldn't have invited that person. I know sometimes people have a separate part. So maybe there's an IT component to this, and you want to get input from that. Well, maybe that's something that as a facilitator, you go and ask them for the beginning, middle, end, so that you have that component in that piece, so that that person doesn't need to sit in an entire meeting, virtual or live. Does that help?
Yeah, you just have to clearly schedule when people should present with relevant information, and then let them go on their way as the meeting progresses. Right.
And you as the facilitator in a virtual meeting, and as well as a live meeting, you as the facilitator need to set some expectations and around how we do it. So if it isn't a cultural thing, it's saying it's really important that we can all see each other and understand, really get where everybody's coming from and see your reaction. So, not only do I want your camera on, but, can't see your face, And so it's like, Kimberly, we can't see your face, because there are people, they lurk in the shadows, and you can't, you might as well not be on camera. But as the facilitator, you're really responsible for keeping those people engaged and reminding people by talking to the camera. So if you are facilitating an all virtual meeting, you know, if you're doing this and you're saying, okay, let's see the next person on the agenda. Okay, yeah, David, it's why don't you go? And David's in the room or David's virtual, but we're not looking at the camera and we are not being as present. So modeling the way you do by modeling what the expectation is and what works for people, that's how you hopefully will influence people to do the same and keep them engaged, because it's hard to keep people engaged. Like right now, I have no idea what all 28 people are doing or 27 because I'm one, but I have no idea. And the thing is that you don't have any idea unless you can see them. And, you know, we learn so much by people's facial expressions. I mean, if I'm presenting my BME and I see a couple of eye rolls, you know, I'm gonna go, okay, okay, maybe I missed that. Is there, what questions does anybody have on that?
Right.
Jan Taylor from ARC had a question. Jan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so this is probably, you know, a side topic, but we often have problems in our office with people showing up for meetings on time. You know,
Yeah.
it's similar to the dropping off problem, but everybody's scheduled, you know, meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. And it's frequently the key players who are the ones who are late for every meeting. So everybody's sort of sitting around waiting for someone to show
so
up.
guilty. I'll just say it. It's me.
So why do you think that is?
Too many meetings.
Right. And why are there too many meetings?
Probably a lot of meetings people don't actually need to be in, they're sitting in on.
It all
Yep.
came back around. That was beautiful.
I mean,
How do you convince them they shouldn't be in those other meetings and they should be in this one?
Right. And again, it's a cultural thing. If you, I mean, there are a lot of major corporations as well as small firms that have, you know, they do have guidelines around that, and their meetings, you know, their meetings stop at 5 minutes to the hour and their meetings start at 5 minutes after the hour. So everybody, you know, people have an opportunity for a bio break and to get to the location sometimes if it's a large building, you know, to actually get to that next meeting. You can also try to schedule, you can also put on your calendar if you think it's going to be tight. And so just block some time on your calendar. So they go, oh, okay, well, she can't come and she's really important. So I got to find time that works for everybody. So that's managing your calendar. So as far as if you're facilitating the meeting, you start when the start time is. And maybe you say, you know, the meeting will begin 2 minutes after the top of the hour. And if people know they're the first on the agenda, people know they're on the agenda, then the idea is you're going to make sure that everybody knows it's really important that everybody is here at the beginning of the meeting, because everyone needs to hear all the contributions. And again, if people are really invested in this, they're not going to want to miss anything. So it's so drilled down to who should be in the meeting. And I had a client, she's a business development for an architectural firm, and she said, I can't make any calls. I can't reach out to people because I have meeting after meeting, literally. And she picked up her laptop and showed it to me because we were virtual. And it was a nightmare. I mean, and she does not need to be in all those meetings, but I don't know. I think people feel like, oh, you know, if I'm powerful, I'm going to call all these people together, you know, because I want them to see and hear what I'm doing and all of that. So we just have to step back and consider this. So start on time and end on time. That's so critical. But you can always determine when that should be. Makes sense. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. All right. What other questions? Any?
I was just gonna make a comment kind of related to that. My company just switched over to Google Suite for all of our email calendar and everything. And you can actually set the default for meetings for 30-minute meetings to be 25 minutes and your hour-long meetings to be 50 minutes. And that just kind of helps me stay on time and let people like have at least a breather for 5 minutes between meetings. And I think
Love
that
it.
helps a lot.
That's great. And if you've got that new platform, everybody's using it, that's, you know, a great thing to, you know, maybe you be the champion for that and say, you know, did you know? Did you know you could set your calendar?
I
for-
mean, and even though it's a default in Google, right, you can still do it in your Outlook calendar. You can just
Yeah.
force it to be the shorter, you know, 5 minutes or whatever shorter.
Yeah, well, you seem pretty savvy on that. Do you think everybody is in your firm? I don't know, but it would be a good thing to communicate.
Yep.
For sure. Love that. Anything else? How are we on time? Let's see.
We got about 15
14.
minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the other thing. If you're finished, you don't have to have the meeting go on longer. I know that we kind of have that tendency to say, well, we got, you know, I call this meeting. When you're done, you're done. And people love getting out of a meeting early. You know, and making sure you're not cramming too much into it. You know, maybe we're going to break this into a couple of meetings because, you know, we really want to start with this piece and then we're going to need a separate meeting for that piece. So people know that, and so they're not saying, well, what about this? What about that? What about the other thing when we're in the meeting for this thing?
Lori, I've got a question. I wonder whether other people are feeling this too.
Okay.
And it's that to suddenly have my meeting start at 9 a.m. instead of 9:07 when everybody gets their cup of coffee and makes it in, and Elizabeth knows what meeting I'm talking about. Or instead of like sending out an agenda which calls out individuals who are going to have, you know, particular things to say, it sort of feels like there's pre-meeting prep that would need to happen just to start to set expectations. Like I would need to send out an agenda that calls out the fact that the meeting really is going to start in time because we're going to try something new. We're going to try to like reboot our meeting. So you almost need to like reintroduce the meeting if you're going to make changes that unfortunately would be somewhat radical.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and it depends upon your culture and the people, you know. So if you are the boss of them, you know, I mean, if you've got the power, then you can sit them down and talk about, this is how we're doing this from now on. And I'm going to do this for my meetings, and I need you to do that for your meetings. And now if you're you know, influence, you leading by influence instead of power, then, you know, it's like, okay, guys, here's the deal. I found something that's going to really help us keep our meetings on time and be efficient and effective and as short as possible. People go, oh, well, that's cool. Tell me about it. So again, it's, you know, what your ability to influence that is. But if, you know, if you don't have that, you know, however you want to communicate it, but yeah, I mean, so am I hearing you say that if I just start doing it this way, people are going to go, what is this? What are you doing?
They'll be wondering why we started the meeting without them. They'll be like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to talk now. I mean, there will be no like pre-preparation for the preparation. I feel like I would need to actually address every individual individually and say, so we're going to do our meetings differently. I'm calling out your name on the next agenda. This is what I kind of want you to have prepared. Get ready. This is going to be more typical from now on. You know, like I couldn't just like flip a switch and make my meetings this.
So how would you go about creating that message?
I think you need to do a company-wide email. I mean, I know you have to have management. It's like they need to push it out and state, even on the agenda itself, there should be those housekeeping rules. You will all keep your camera on, you know, we will do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone will participate and then you begin the meeting. So, because otherwise I don't know how we're talking about this all right now, but we would need to articulate it in a memo, even something like do not schedule meetings during lunch. Because I know for our firm, our CEO had to send a meeting telling everybody to stop scheduling people during lunchtime because we didn't have breaks. And I think that that's really powerful and effective.
Okay, so it is. And so how are we going to do that? You need to sell the idea, right?
Yeah.
So how are you going to craft your message to sell the idea?
Definitely going to start with the first two talking points you opened with. Whatever those two statistics were, they made my eyes kind of boggle a little bit.
Okay. That's kind of that's your proof, your proof to the problem, but wouldn't you use a beginning, middle, end story?
Oh,
Yeah.
And you'll have to
So-
convince everybody that it is more efficient and more productive in the long run. I mean, there's a reason for doing it.
Yeah, I mean, let them know. None of us like X, Y, and Z. None of us like meetings that don't start on time, meetings that go over time, meetings that are scheduled over lunch, meetings where people are, going down rabbit holes and no one is controlling that and no outcome and no follow-up, So it's about starting with that. And then, hey, I have this great solution as to how we can solve that. And that's where you articulate that. And, then it's like, okay, because this is what this is going to do for us. Now, important thing that I didn't mention about the story structure. It doesn't have to go beginning, middle, end all the time. So sometimes you're going to start with, okay, here's the big problem. And here's what can happen if we solve that problem. Now, let me share with you my ideas for doing that. So it helps for them to know, okay, here's the problem, but tell me what, they want to know the solution, but tell me where we're going to get if I listen to you and if I do what you're going to suggest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it doesn't always happen that way. I mean, some movies start in the middle and then they go back to the beginning. And I just think the movie, because that's easy for most people to relate to, but we want to get to the, maybe it's, you start with statistics and start with what everybody said, what everybody is feeling and how much it's costing the company and how it's impacting the team members. And then it's like, we really need to make sure that we've got the right people in meetings, that we're not wasting time, that we're not wasting money, and that every meeting is effective. And here's how I propose to do that we do that. In a perfect world. Because we don't always have leaders that see it the way we do, and they want to do it the way they've always done it. And I've noticed that. I've noticed that a lot in architectural firms. So,
Lori, I
Everybody-
want to make sure that you get through all of the slides that you want to get through. If we've reached the end and people have questions about anything from the beginning to the middle or something we haven't covered, I'd love to give folks a chance to be able to sort of ask those.
well, I don't have anything. I don't have anything else to share because we've covered everything that any kind of a slide, and I only had a couple. So I am definitely.
So then let it rip.
Andy, you have a question? Go ahead.
Hi, yes, good morning. Thanks for this awesome presentation. It's an eye opener, and it's I'm learning a lot. I love it. I love that you can still learn stuff, however long you've been in this industry.
Yes, well, thanks for that feedback, because I always think it's really a great thing, right? Because I'm really passionate about it.
So the follow-up after the meetings and keeping people accountable for getting the stuff that they promised that they would do and getting back to the group or to you individually. Normally that works. It's not. Sometimes it works with several nudges, though, like with the Slack message and email. Okay, I'll call them because they're not responding because they're so busy. So what do you do?
And you know what? It might be based on individual people, because some people might be great at it, and then there's the ones that you always have to follow up with. Again, I think it's a matter of recapping the action items, right? And who's going to do them and by when, and then capturing that in the meeting, going back over it when you're closing the meeting, and then afterwards, it's a lot of work, but afterwards you've got to make a note to schedule a time to email them back. Or first of all, you'd want to send it out to everybody and say, okay, this is what everybody's committed to and by when. So everybody knows what everybody else is supposed to be doing. And, some people you won't have to follow up with, and some people will. Do you think does that make sense? I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it does make sense. And yes, it is. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Well, I mean, again, it's like, it starts with, okay, do I really need to call a meeting for this? Or can I call two people and ask some questions and have them give me their, you know.
Feedback or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Then that's good. Thanks.
Sure. And you all are so darn busy, and I know in a perfect world, you know, you're going to leave here today going, oh, that's so great. And then it's like, oh my God, I don't have time to do that. So really, really intentionally set meetings and intentionally invite people to them and hold them accountable. And it definitely helps to only have people in the room that have contribution, because otherwise you've got, you know, people comment. They don't have a role, but they like to comment and shoot holes in what everybody else is saying.
Chris has a question.
Well, just to follow up, like a thing that maybe could help Sandy. So for the ACE meetings that I run, I have everybody that has like, so we meet monthly and then committees meet in between the board meetings. And so I have everybody that has like their tasks for the month, and then really, and some weekly things that should just fall off, that shouldn't be on there every month. And then we have like 3-month goals. So like planning a fundraiser or something like that would be on there reoccurring. And then we have timelines for everybody, and everybody has access to that. And everybody needs to be contributing something that's involved. So it's just really, and then we outline at the end too, like, do we need to share anything with like a committee member that's not at the board meeting or something like that? So just documenting it. So then it's almost like your rolling agenda, but you're able to like cross things off, and then we save those for each month. That people can go back to. So
right, that's great for ongoing meetings, and that's really good, because nobody likes to show up at a board meeting, and I know that, without being prepared, because you don't look so good. And it reduces your value, you know, to the organization, whether it's, you know, nonprofit or.
And I've adapted that to like the meetings that I lead at my company. Like I have that same structure. So for people that are involved, and then there's like a studio director that he's really adamant of starting meetings on time, and I love that. So we start the meetings, and then people will come in like 8 minutes in, and we're like halfway through what we needed to talk about already. So I think, and then now people show up on time for his meetings because they know he starts on time. So, so yeah, so it's a lot of, there's not like one answer for everything, but.
Yeah, that goes to Jan Taylor's question, which was how to get people to show up on time. And I was thinking that public shame is pretty strong motivator, right? Like we have a project managers meeting that starts every Friday at, I don't even know what, God, first like an hour. And I think it only took about 2 of those for somebody to feel like, ooh, I better be there on time. They mean it.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, wow. Yeah, it does work. You know, and I think if you treat meetings more like a project, like, okay, do we really need a meeting? Are there players that really need to integrate and need to all hear what's going on? You know, I mean, project updates are, you know, crazy. They should be stand-up meetings, and, you know, 15 minutes with everybody knowing how much time they have. Even if you have to set a timer, you know, how much time you have to give an update, and be really specific as to what you're asking people for. I know a lot of people have stand-ups, and it makes the meetings go more quickly. People like that.
I think that's exactly what Pia's question in the chat was just now. She said there are a lot of regular update type meetings, and she asked, is there a way to make these better? Often there are many non-speaking participants.
Yep.
I think that's what you were just talking to.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, that goes on. And, you know, there's video out, and I can't remember the 2 guys that do these videos about like the best meeting ever and the worst meeting ever and the best conference call. But they stereotype the characters of how people, you know, present in meetings. You know, there's always the time person, like, come on, let's go on, let's get going. And then there's a person that just can't really articulate anything. They just keep going around and around. And so, I mean, this really it helps all of those. The ones that shoot ideas down, you know, don't invite them.
Maybe you just don't even need a meeting either. Maybe it's just an update, and you know.
Yep. Then updates can be in emails. Yes.
Yeah. All right, you guys, we are at 9:30. So
yes, absolutely. And I would encourage, I don't know if anybody was able to let's see if anybody was able to grab the screen grab, if you want any parts of this. If you have additional questions, let me first say, if you want any parts of the presentation or any of the slides, I will send this to, who should I send it to?
Either one.
Us, yeah.
Okay, Marcia, Kate. So I just, you can let them know and I will send the slides. And if you have any other questions, you can certainly either reach out to us or send your questions that didn't get answered to Kate and Marcia. And I will make sure that I provide answers. Thanks so much, you guys. You've been amazing. I hope it was valuable for you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Lori.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
All right.
We're gonna
Have a
go
good
do
day.
better now. We can do it.
Yay. Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.